Originally, as we're going to learn inside, Memachaik referred to hides of animals. And in the Mishkan, you had various animals whose hides were used as coverings for the Mishkan. And they had to be flattened and smooth. Tanning is a major process. And we learned about tanning in the previous Melacha, but as part of that process, you also had to smooth the hides so that they would be usable either for the hide itself or for parchment to write on. So in the case of hides, which are relatively hard, the Melacha is Memachaik. That's the original Melacha. An extension of this Melacha, a Tolda, a derivative. Remember that derivatives of Melachas are also forbidden min ha-Torah, unlike rabbinic extensions or decrees that you might come to do a Melacha, or habitually one thing leads to another, like climbing a tree leads to breaking branches, or you might mistakenly think that the Melacha is permissible because you're doing something which resembles the Melacha. Those are the Rabbonim. They're not Melachas. They're Gzeiros. They're rabbinic decrees, lest you come to do a Melacha. But a Tulda is the derivative of the original Melacha, and the very fact that all 39 categories are called Ovois Melachos, parent Melachos, parent implies that there are offspring. So the offspring, so to speak, of each Melacha, and many Melachas have a whole lot of Tuldas, which to us, for example, is the indistinguishable often from the original Melacha. For example, the parent Melacha might be baking and the derivative would be cooking. The parent Melacha might be planting in the ground the grain seed, and the derivative is the planting a tree. The one was done for the sake of the Mishkan, the other one was not done for the sake of the Mishkan. The one that was done for the sake of the Mishkan is the parent Melacha. The one that was not done for the sake of constructing the Mishkan is the derivative, the offspring, but both are both the parent and the Tolda, the derivative, are forbidden min ha-Torah. In our case, the parent Melacha was done with hides, Memachaik. The derivative, also forbidden min ha-Torah, is Memachereyach. Memachereyach is smearing, smoothing, such as you would do, for example, with an ointment. So you can call it flattening like a hide, which is a pretty solid surface, but the act of smoothing is forbidden also min ha-Torah. And since we don't deal that much with hides, most of the chapter will refer to Memareyach, as in the example, as I said, of ointments and soaps, if they're solid, etc. So, chapter 29, for those who just joined, page 913. Memachaik, smoothing. Do we have a volunteer, Balkoire? Eleni is being represented by Alif. Okay.
Yes, Fred, I don't have my safer here. I'm sorry,
You
Rabbi.
don't have your safer, shame.
Rabbi, I'm actually in a public place, so I can't read today. I put it on the group.
Okay.
Someone else can read. I'm just going to follow. I'm sorry.
All right.
I have to stay muted. The noise is going to disturb everybody, and I'm not private.
Okay.
Thank you.
Deborah, how about it?
No, not really.
Not
Right.
really. Okay. Memachaik, smoothing. Memachaik in the Mishkan. the hides of the elim, the rams, had to be scraped and smoothed to process the finished leather needed for the coverings of the Mishkan.
Okay, Rabbi, would you like me to read?
Go right ahead.
I will. Okay.
Just before you start, the Torah talks about oiros elim me'odomim, reddened hides of rams, and those hides were used as a covering. It wasn't quite waterproof, but it was pretty much waterproof. The good news is that they were in a desert and it didn't rain much anyhow, so you didn't need it that much to be that waterproof. But in addition, they were also the oiros techoshim, the hides of techoshim. What techoshim are? At machloikis, but according to the opinion that techoshim were steel skins, oiros techoshim were steel skins, then it's definitely a waterproof substance. So at any rate, back to the elim. So a hide has several layers. The inner layer is used as parchment. The outer layer is used as leather. So those outer layers had to be scraped of hair and smoothed in order to make the leather for the coverings of the Mishkan. Carry on with A, please. So who volunteered before?
Rose.
Then Rose has disappeared. She was here.
Yeah, Ross is not on the list of participants. I heard them go.
Maybe maybe there's load shedding.
Something obviously happened.
Okay. All right, I'll continue. A, the basic premise of Memachaik, as it was in the Mishkan. As noted in the previous chapter of Me'abed, which is tanning, the overall tanning process also involves removal of the surface hair from the hide. So the outer surface of a hide naturally has hair. So you want to remove that. Why do you want to remove it? That's because it is desirable that the finished leather or parchment be completely smooth and free of hair. Well, that's a little bit inaccurate because, like I said, the parchment is made from the inside and the hair doesn't grow on the inside. But leather on the outside does have hair and you want to take it off. Scraping off this excess hair to achieve a smooth surface, that's the main part. It's not about scraping off the hair, but creating a smooth surface. That's the Melacha of Memachaik. However, Memachaik is not limited to hides only, scraping or sanding. Any surface to achieve a smoothness may also be Memachaik, as shall be explained further. So the main Melacha deals with hides. The derivative we're going to learn now. The two categories of the Melacha of Memachaik. The Melacha of Memachaik is actually comprised of essentially two categories of smoothing. One, the Memachaik, that's the Av Melacha, which we've already talked about. The second, the derivative, is Memareyach. Miruach is smearing. And in fact, in modern Hebrew, the word for ointment is mimrach, that which is smooth on. Well, come back, Raz.
Sorry,
We were worried about your
Rabbi, I think
disappearance.
it's my Wi-Fi. It
Okay. You know, it's wonderful
sold.
to have so much
I don't know
technology to
where-
blame.
Sorry.
Okay,
Where,
it's good. The Wi-Fi is trouble.
yeah.
You want to carry on? We're up to
Should I-
Memachaik refers to. Oh, froze again.
At the bottom of the page.
Memachaik,
Even you are
refers
funny. You
to-
are locking up.
I'll carry on, you'll catch up. Memachaik refers to smoothing hard, rough surfaces like wood, or even flexible materials like leather that are firm in the sense that they cannot be readily molded into a shape. If you put them in a jar, for example, they would not retain the shape that they got when squeezing them into the jar. That's Memachik, the more firm substances. Memareyach refers to smoothing soft, pliable substances that may be pressed or molded into a shape like wax.
Okay, I'm here. See.
Okay.
The different forms of Memachik. Memachik includes smoothing any kind of hard, solid surface where a smoother surface can make it more
Make it.
useful for some purpose.
Now that's an important sentence. In other words, it's not just a matter of making something rough smooth. That smoothness has to create some additional functionality for which it wasn't suitable before you smoothed it. Got it? Okay. This malacha.
I'm just writing a smoothest can additional quality. Right, this examples. Removing bark or scraping lumps of unevenness from a wooden log. Sanding down a rough piece of wood or wooden furniture. Scrubbing a metal pot with dry steel wool. If the steel wool is wet,
Raz, your Wi-Fi is spotty. Raz, your Wi-Fi is spotty. I'm going to read.
And of tochen, grinding. Gone. Am I gone?
Yeah.
Roz, your Wi-Fi is not reliable, so allow Rabbi Weinberg to read because we lose you occasionally.
Okay. Back
Sorry,
to the,
yeah.
back to the second line. Back to the second line on the page. This malacha may be accomplished by scraping or sanding a rough surface to make it smoother. Rubbing a surface with an abrasive may also be memachaik. So even if you're not standing it, but if you take a piece of steel wool, not steel wool, standing paper, that would also be memachaik. So, examples: removing bark or scraping lumps and unevenness from a wooden log. Standing down a rough piece of wood or wooden furniture. Scrubbing a metal pot with dry steel wool. Why do I say dry? Because if it's wet, it could be in another malacha. Scrubbing may also involve mefarik. We won't go into that. Sanding a metal surface, like rubbing rust spots from a metal knife or spoon with dry steel wool. Note, standing wood and metal may also entail the melacha of teichen, because what comes off the metal is actually tiny fragments of metal which were on the surface. So you're grinding down the metal into those fragments, and grinding is a melacha in itself. But we're not dealing with that. as much as the smoothing, which is Memachaik. Scraping leather shoes. One may not scrape moist mud or thick grime from the sole of a leather shoe with a knife or other sharp edge, because the scraping action, when done in an ordinary manner, has the effect of smoothing the leather, similar to the effect of sanding. Okay, so what do if you got mud on the shoes? It's a rainy day, you walk to shul, and now you have mud in your shoe. You're going to come home, or you're going to go to your host and track mud all over the house. What do? We'll see in a moment. Scraping in this manner is a form of Memachaik, even if the smoothing effect is hardly perceptible. Scraping is very prohibited, even though the intention is merely to get rid of the soil. And one has no thought of smoothing the leather, because the smoothing effect on the leather is an objective change, and it would be classified as, ladies, as a sikreshe, an automatic and inevitable consequence, a melacha consequence of a permissible action. The permissible action is taking away the mud or the grime. The inevitable consequence is smoothing the leather. Smoothing the leather is a melacha, so you may not remove the grime, because you will inadvertently but inevitably be smoothing the leather. The Melacha-Memachaik must therefore be regarded as an inevitable consequence of sikreshe and prohibited. Note, historical note, in Europe during the period of the Shulchan Aruch, there were few, if any, paved roads. See, we're going back to olden times. And most thoroughfares were muddy for much of the year. To prevent the ever-present mud from being tracked into every home, scraping bars were set into the ground in front of most homes and buildings. They were constructed of a sharp-edged bar attached to two posts on which people would scrape mud and dirt from the soles of their shoes and boots before entering. So that was a standard practice, and the Taz writes that one should not scrape his shoes against those metal bars if they are sharp-edged, because of the Melacha-Memachaik. Other poskim prohibit scraping against any bar, even one with a thick, dull edge. However, it's permissible to scrape one's shoes against the edge of a stair if it doesn't have a sharp metal edge, certainly against a concrete curb, if he's careful to do so slowly and gently. It could be that in the process you will smooth the leather, but since that's not your intention, and it is not inevitable, as they'll say in the next line, so it's a regular dovor
Misken.
she'enoi miskavein, an unintentional consequence. It's a melacha if it happens, but that's not your intention. You intend to do something permissible to get the mud off. So therefore, you may scrape the mud off, even though it may result in the smoothing of leather.
So a front door mat it's permissible on a front door mat to wipe your feet off.
When doing so in this fashion, there is no sikreshe, and the scraping action is therefore permitted even according to the Taz. Note, scraping dry mud, until now we're talking about soft mud, which recently got on the shoe. But if you're scraping dry mud from the shoes, it's forbidden in all cases, because of toichein, you're grinding up the mud into particles. See the melacha of toichein. All right? So what do you do? So we're
What,
gonna,
Rabbi, what does one do if you've stood in dog shit?
Take the shoes off.
here we go. There are other remedies. We're going to learn about them. Where is
Shut
it?
in.
Should be here. So see, the ideal thing is to bang it from the inside. You can also remove it with a shmata, with a cloth or a paper towel or something without scraping. If you're in someone else's house, it's recommended that you take the shoe off. Maybe your own house, but certainly your host house. Using soap on Shabbos. Bars of soap, okay? The Tiferes Yisroel, which was written by Rabbi Yisroel Lipschitz in the late 1800s as a commentary on the Mishnah. The Tiferes Yisroel writes that washing with solid soap is forbidden under the Melacha-Memachaik, and his ruling is quoted by later authorities. So until his time, it wasn't common to have bars of soap. So it doesn't show up much in the words of the poskim. But when it became more prevalent, that's when it became an issue for Shabbos, and that's when he issued his ruling that this is memachek, you are flattening the bar of soap. This is the basis for what's become the universally accepted practice in our communities to refrain from washing hands or dishes, even in cold water. Hot water is a problem on its own, with or without soap, but even in cold water, washing with hard soap on Shabbos. Okay? So that's universally accepted. Soaps used in the days of the Tiferes Yisroel. However, the solid soap referred to by the Tiferes Yisroel was of a soft, pliable consistency that changes shape during use, not the hard soap bars in common use today. The early day soaps were indeed comparable to soft wax, a substance subject to Memareyach, unlike the hard soaps of today. Furthermore, those soaps had very rough substances that would become smoother with each use. What about today's soaps? The difficulty with a ruling on soap today, since our bars of soap today are smooth, before and after they've been used, it's difficult to understand how the lathering of hard soap falls under the Melacha-Memachaik, which entails smoothing a rough surface. Nevertheless, it may be contending that the lathering had the halachic effect of smoothing the surface of the soap bar, perhaps because the top layer is rubbed away with each use, or that the smearing of the lather upon one's skin, never mind the bar, but once it's on your skin and you're rubbing, then you are flattening it like flattening a cream or ointment. The smearing of the lather upon one's skin is itself a form of Memareyach.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Just a minute, we'll finish the paragraph and I'll take your questions. Certainly, if, as often happens, the soap bar was sitting in a soap dish with an accumulation of water, and as a result became very soft and pliable, then using that soft soap or rubbing the pasty part may indeed be a genuine form of Memareyach. In any case, one dare not trifle with this halachic restriction. It's generally accepted. We don't wash with bars of soap. Go ahead. Question.
You go out camping and you've got dirt on your hands. Can you use soil as an abrasive to clean your hands? Or is
You
that
can use the
Memachaik?
soil if the soil has not clumped up. If it has, then it would be
Right.
toichen grinding to use that as an abrasive.
But you can use the soil as
Yeah.
the sand
And
as an
the only
abrasive.
thing is that the soil would have had to be a soil which you had set aside before Shabbos for that purpose, because otherwise soil is mukta.
And
Okay.
thinking most bars of soap have letters or pictures or some kind of decoration. So you would be not only using that, you would be erasing those decorations using that
Yeah,
hard soap.
but you see, those letters or decorations go deep into the bar.
Mm.
So when you're using it, I doubt that you're actually erasing whatever is there. So even if you did, it would be a dover she'enim miskaven, and you'd be allowed to do it. It would not inevitable. Okay?
We don't anyway.
Liquid soap. And Reb Moshe Feinstein, we discussed this in the past. Reb Moshe Feinstein was of the opinion that even things which were not legislated by Chazal, they were not forbidden as a gzeira, we have the ability, we meaning nowadays, poskim have the ability to legislate against them if we can say that had they been around when Chazal legislated against other things, they would have legislated against this as well. That was his opinion. For that reason, he forbade the use of Shabbos clocks, which turn appliances on and off, except for heating and cooling, which you would be allowed to ask a goy to do. Reb Moshe felt that using a Shabbos clock would be like asking a goy to do melacha for you, although Chazal never decreed against the use of a Shabbos clock. That's because it didn't exist. But had it existed, they would have decreed that one should not use the Shabbos clock, just like they decreed not to employ a goy, use a goy for that purpose. So that was his position, but it was rejected by 95% of poskim. Likewise here, Reb Moshe wanted to state that if you have a liquid soap which forms a what's it called, a smooth surface when you're washing, and now you're rubbing that smooth surface, that ought to be forbidden, because it too is Memachaik. Now, there never was such a decree against liquids, but as I said, Reb Moshe says that that's simply because the condition didn't exist at the time. And that's even more debatable than the electric, the Shabbos clocks, because they used to use oils regularly. We know that it was the hygienic practice to smear oil on the body, on the head. So that's even more dubious than the other one. So generally speaking, poskim of today did not accept Reb Moshe's position about liquid soap, and it's generally accepted that we do use liquid soap. That's what this paragraph is about. Liquid soap. Liquid soaps, however, are permitted by most poskim because they have a loose consistency. Memareyach, a Tolda derivative of Memachaik, applies only to a solid or semi-solid substance. Yet, some leading poskim adopt a stringent view, even with regard to liquid soaps, due to the dense and viscous lather that forms during their use. It is therefore customary in many circles to dilute the soap to make it especially thin, thereby avoiding any shyness. As I said, this is a very much a minority opinion. The liquid soap may be diluted with water on Shabbos if it was not prepared before. One may also pour some undiluted soap on his hand or skin and then rinse it under the faucet before rubbing it in. After rinsing begins, the liquid soap becomes quickly diluted of its own accord and is then permitted to be rubbed and used. If you want to be machmir, fine, not necessary. Polishing glassware, chinaware, silverware. Although one is permitted to wash dishes that will be used on Shabbos, one may not polish glassware, chinaware, or silverware to give them a high glossy shine, even if no polish is used, and certainly if it is. Now, if polish is used, then there's Memachaik on the polish. If polish is not used, then you're probably using something of a roughish surface in order to give them that sheen. That would be the problem.
What about silver dip?
What's silver dip?
It's a liquid. If you put silver into it, it removes the oxidation. But all you're doing is you dip it in and it just comes off, and then you dry your article and it's clean.
What happens to the dip after you take the plate out or the glass out?
It stays there. It stays in its clean.
Yeah, but there's some on the plate.
You wash it off.
Do you wash it off or do you wipe it off?
You just rinse it and then you dry it.
You rinse it, you wash it off. Okay, that would be okay. But this is not for Shabbos. This is what you do before Shabbos to make sure that your chinaware, your silverware is ready for Shabbos. Chinaware, I don't think it oxidizes. No, it's silverware. Good. Memachaik, smoothing a pliable surface. And you know what? I'm gonna go a little bit further until E, and then I'll take questions. Smoothing a pliable surface, as noted earlier, CB, about the Melacha-Memachaik includes two primary methods of smoothing, Memachaik and Memachaik. The Melacha is therefore applicable not only to hard or firm surfaces, but to soft and pliable substances as well, such as wax or putty. Examples: one may not press and smooth out putty on a window pane or caulking in a wall joint. A strange example, because generally Shabbos, you wouldn't be doing that as part of the Melacha building. 2, one may not scrape or scratch off a drop of melted wax that dripped upon a tabletop or the page of a sefer or book, because to do so entails smoothing of the wax. By the way, if you're that close to the candle that the wax drips on the page, you're too close. On Shabbos, I mean, if you want to read by candlelight on Wednesday night when there's load shedding, that's fine. You know the old joke we used to say about Zimbabwe? What did they have before candles? Answer: electricity. So if you want to do it on Wednesday night, that's fine.
Electricity.
But on Shabbos, you don't hold a sefer that close to a candle and read by candlelight because we're concerned that you may turn the candle and maybe adjust it. Not so much a wax candle, but a something which involves a wick. In the case of soft and pliable substances, the act of smoothing is classified as the Tolda derivative of the Melacha called Memareyach. In the Mishkan, Memachaik was performed on leather, which is a firm material, not a pliant substance. It can't readily be molded into a shape. Smoothing pliable substances is similar only in purpose, not substance, and is therefore not the Avratulda. All right, we'll stop here. You got the idea. Next time we're going to talk about creams, ointments. What happens if on Shabbos you have chapped skin in the winter, or chas v'sholem, a burn? What do you apply to the body? So we'll learn that next time.
Yeah, but Wineberg,
Yes,
I've got a question. If oats were soaked before Shabbos, on Shabbos, can you put hot water in a kli sheni into the oats and mix it?
You want to eat it?
Yes.
Not using it as a poultice or something. You want to eat it.
Yes, to eat it.
If they were soaked before Shabbos and they were not
Yes.
cooked, so they're still raw.
Yes.
The soaking only softens them.
Right.
So now, if you put them into a kli rishon, you'd be cooking them. Into a kli sheni, you would not be cooking them, but because they've already been pre-softened, and we learned that there are certain things which are easily cooked that do cook in a kli sheni, so don't use the kli sheni either. Pour it over again, and it shouldn't be that hot, and then you can eat it. However, you're running into another problem. The problem is losh. When you stir those oats, you are in effect kneading them. You're stirring them in water or in milk or whatever. So you would be kneading, and therefore you need to do two changes from the norm. Number one, you need to put them in the opposite order. If you normally put in the oats and then the water, you must put in the water and then the oats. You must also stir them in an unusual way. Anybody remember? Yeah, we learned this. How do you stir them?
Yes, with a
Cut
fork.
through it.
In an X or crisscross pattern instead of the usual way of stirring them. Because the malacha of losh consists of two components. One, combining ingredients which coagulate when they're combined. Two, the actual blending, kneading, in the case of dough, kneading them together. So you have to avoid both of them. You need to do a shinui on both of them. One, in the way you combine the ingredients and put them in the opposite order. And two, in the way you blend the ingredients, so you stir it in a way that's not the norm. Okay, clear? Now, after all that, I ask you, couldn't you cook them before Shabbos?
No, these are the wazubles. You buy them in a container, and it just tells you to soak them.
Are they pre-cooked?
I don't know. I think they're raw.
There are instant oats, which are parboiled, and probably better to use on Shabbos than the raw. And can't you give yourself a break on Shabbos? Eat something yummy instead of the same oats. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Hi, Rabbi. Sorry. It's
Yeah.
Diane Fagan. Hi. Could you tell me what book you're using for this lesson?
I answered you on the chat,
Oh, sorry.
and I put in the name of the author as well. However, it is a set of 4 books, and we are at the end of the second one. We have about 20 pages left, so we're going to be starting the third one. The set is rather expensive.
We're on Gimel.
Who
We are
bought it?
Gimel, Rabbi.
We're on Gimel,
Oh,
Rabbi.
we're on Gimel. Yeah, I'm
Gimel.
sorry.
Mm.
Got
Oh, okay. Thank you.
so we're about to start the 4th.
Mm.
Now, so who bought this lately, a year or 2 ago when we started? It was about 1,500 Rand, yeah?
Devorah got it for us.
Who got it?
Devorah, Tobias, her husband, got it for
Devorah got it, yeah. Devorah, you remember how much it was?
I think it was about
12.
Okay, with the current exchange rate, it is probably about 16 or 1,700 Rand. So if that is prohibitive for you, I can look around and perhaps get one on loan, okay?
Rabbi, I have a question, please.
Yes, then.
It's regarding Orla again. A pecan tree takes 10 years before it starts to give fruit. Is the din on the tree or on the fruit?
Tree.
In other words, the first nuts that will come off that 10-year-old tree may be eaten. Thank you.
Very interesting that, Anne.
You need a lot of patience for that, huh? This is like the Chayni Ma'agel story.
I'm not going anywhere, Rabbi. I still plant trees.
Yeah, okay.
So basically, sorry, to further on that, if I say plant a lemon tree and it takes, say, 3 years or something for the lemons to grow, I only have to wait like 2 more years. I mean, you got to do the you got to do the Kaddish Hashem thing and all that too. So it's not after 3 years. I waited for the lemons to grow and then I waited.
I never saw a pecan tree grow, but lemons you do see, and they have immature lemons in the first years. After 3 or 4 years, then you have edible lemons. But by that time, the 3 years have gone by, and you may enjoy the lemons.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I waited 3 years from the time that, the edible lemons came. Well, not in 3 years, then you have to do Kaddish Lashem. So 4 years.
Okay, but that 4th year, which is called Neta Revoi, the planting of the 4th, is taken to Yerushalayim, like Meister Sheni, and enjoyed there. But we don't have that today. Certainly outside Eretz Yisrael.
Rabbi,
Oh, sorry.
can I ask you a question? It hasn't anything to do with this.
Ella, yeah.
It's about Shavuos coming up, and the custom that Chabad don't cook fish in milk. Can you tell us a little bit more of that custom, about that custom?
We don't eat fish in milk.
But we do eat cheese in milk, in fish.
Yes, you can put in something else with the milk, or if it's not actually milk, you can have it with the fish.
What
Like
can you
cream?
put in with the milk?
Can
Can you put cream? Can you put cream with is that the same status as
So
milk?
that it no longer has the consistency of milk. Yeah.
you
Can
put
you milk
hard?
cream?
1 second,
So
Raj,
can
hold
you
on. Let Ella finish and then you'll talk.
Can-
Yes.
Can you mix the cream with the milk and use that and cook it, the fish in the mixture of cream with milk?
Once it no longer has the consistency of the milk, it's okay.
It needs quite a fair amount of the cream, in other words.
Depends how thick your milk is. If it's full cream milk, you'll need less cream. If it's fat-free milk, it'll need more cream. I can't give you an answer offhand how much cream you need. Depends how much milk you've got. So you'll see, try it out. Do a home economics experiment before Shavuos. Raz.
Are we allowed hard cheese with fish? Yellow hard cheese with fish?
That's fine. Fine.
Is that fine? I have a very complicated question to ask you, Rabbi. With load shedding,
in my head?
Yes, yeah, with load shedding, my oven is warming up the food Erev Shabbos until candle lighting time. And as candle lighting time comes in, I switch the oven off and it's prepared, and I place a tray of
Raz, you're breaking up. I can't understand your question. It's so complicated that I can't even hear
so
it.
that the tea lights are not extinguished. Aye. Okay.
Raz,
so
you're
there's a
breaking up.
tray
You're
of
breaking
tea
up.
lights.
Raz, you're breaking up.
My
Okay, any
internet
other
is terrible.
questions?
I'm sorry.
Esty, you were going to ask something? Esty? You had
No,
something?
sorry. No, I wasn't going to ask anything. I was very interested in what Roz was saying, but maybe she can repeat it. Maybe she's in a
I'll
better.
tell you what, instead of repeating it, I'll tell you what the din is, and it'll cover different eventualities. If you have something in the oven, when candle lighting time comes and there's load shedding, which for some reason they start typically at 5 o'clock, which is just about exactly candle lighting time these days. So the oven goes off and it comes back on again 2.5 hours later. Then if it warms the food, that's not a problem. However, you cannot have an oven on if the oven has a dial, because you may inadvertently adjust the dial. By the way, if you left the oven on, you're going to waste a lot of electricity. You may all by yourself cause more load shedding. So it's a bad idea to have the oven on through Shabbos. But if it's in a warmer and you've covered the dial, then that's okay. A warmer is not used for cooking, so it's not a problem to have it on. The thermostat is not that sensitive, so you won't be causing it to go on when you open the door. An oven does have a sensitive thermostat, so when you open the door of the oven, you may very well be causing, inevitably, the oven to switch on, the thermostat to switch on the oven. So it's not a great idea to have it in the oven anyhow, unless you're just keeping it warm from the heat that was there before. If you had started cooking your food and the food was not cooked even partially, by the time the stove was shut off by load shedding, you will have a problem, because that food was now cooked on Shabbos. Although you did not cook it, you didn't do an action to cook it, but the food was cooked on Shabbos by the power being switched back on. So you're going to have a problem. Why do I say you're going to have a problem instead of simply saying it's permissible, it's forbidden? There are poskim who say that if you did not tamper at all with the controls of the stove, it just went off by itself and on by itself thanks to city power, then it does not cause the food to be forbidden. So someone asked me last week, he had a cholent which had everything for the Shabbos day meal. It had the meat, it had the kugel, everything in the cholent. And it all went, he had just put it up, and it went off at 5 o'clock. It went on again after 8. So it cooked after 8. And that was his whole Shabbos meal. It was, he had lots of company, and he had nothing to serve them. So I said, in that situation, although it's squeaky, being that he didn't do anything to adjust to cause the cooking, so he could rely in that squeaky situation, because it's the loss of a Shabbos meal and for a whole lot of people, etc., etc. So he could rely on the opinion that says that since he didn't do anything to cause the cooking, the food does not become forbidden. But ordinarily, we would not rely on that opinion. So you should have your food cooked before Shabbos, even if you habitually put up your cholent just before. Don't do it nowadays if you have an electric oven, an electric stove, because you don't know what they're going to come up with next. One guy steals a cable and plunges us all into darkness. And so you can't rely on that. So cook your cholent before Shabbos or whatever else you need to cook. Have it cooked by the time Licht Benchen arrives. Okay?
Does that apply to an urn as well?
It would apply to an urn, except that
You
an
don't
urn
touch the
generally cooks in about 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
This last time, the power cut as I turned on the urn for Shabbos, and so the water was cold when we went into Shabbos. So does that mean we can't use that water again?
No, don't use it.
Okay, thank you.
And
Yeah,
can
but
I ask you to, sorry, continue, Kevin.
Thank you,
Okay.
Jay. A
Ella,
slow cooker, we normally put it on just before Shabbos.
what? A slow cooker? Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't put it on just before Shabbos, as long as there's load